Hey everyone, my tier list for set 12 is finally out, and it's not only a special day because a new set came out, it's a special day because I'm coming out with a snapshot one day early, and we have many more comps than I normally do at the start of the set. I can't even count to see how many this is, but we have like a ton in the S tier, ton in the A tier. The reason why there are so many is because this set is extremely flexible, so you will need to kind of have a bit more depth in your comp pool, in my opinion at least, because there's so many different niche things you could kind of go based on what augments you get, what starts you get. So it's really important more than ever. I'm not just saying that, even though my interests are aligned with that, but to pay attention to this video. So after we go through the tier list, we'll go over how to play each and every single one of these comps that we have listed here, such as what champions you want to go for, what items you want to build, and also what augments you want, and a little bit on how to play it. So first off, in the S tier, we have Multistriker Kassidin, a very degenerate reroll comp there. Same with the Syndra Cassiopeia reroll. These two are probably the two strongest rerolls, at least in my opinion. I've been making TFT guides for over 4 years now. These two comps are absolutely ridiculous right now, especially the Syndra one, but it's a bit situational. Built different, extremely good right now. What I like doing is checking the data. I go to stats and then click on augments over here. And then I just type in built different. It's averaging a 3.95 right now. Very, very strong for built different. Sweet Tooth Nunu, that's a hero augment. There are a couple of hero augments in the set. I think there are like 6 of them, but some of them are really strong, some of them are really weak, and there are some in between. Sweet Tooth Nunu is one of the very strong ones. Chrono Karma gonna be next. This is the best flex comp. You just play 4 Chrono with a Karma, blue buff, red buff, or blue buff Morello, and the rest of your team comp, you just throw in whatever. You have 4 Chrono and then a bunch of other units. You'll be doing perfectly fine with that. Great flex comp. Multistriker Kalista, a couple of attack damage builds for 4 cost. Kalista is a 4 cost in this set. We'll go over the Multistriker Kalista version and like the Bastion AD flex version. Next up, we have Witchcraft Fiora Karma, a great comp if you end up getting a Witchcraft spatula. And lastly, we have Fast 9. So Fast 9, very good at the start of sets sometimes because some legendaries are just super strong. It's going to be Xerath in this set. He's absolutely disgusting powerful. Morgana, a great tank at a 5 cost too. In the A tier, we have Bastion AD, which is either going Varus or going for Kalista. After that, we have Akali and Nilah, Kogmaw and Jinx reroll. Very strong reroll again there. But this one's a 2 and 3 cost reroll. Deja Vu Galio, another hero augment. Zap Attack Blitzcrank, hero augment. Reroll Veigar, super fun comp. I love Veigar. The mage version's very good. Eldritch Mages, speaking of mages. And then we have Pyro Varus, another solid attack damage comp. Spider Queen Elise, hero augment. Spin to win Wukong, hero augment. 2 tanky. It's similar to built different, but instead of running like 4 costs, you pretty much just run a lot of copy of 2 costs. More on that later. Frost Pyro Olaf. Some people call this like Frostfire Olaf. I love this comp too. It's a very interesting one because it's like fire and ice, cool combo, you know. And then lastly, we have Warwick reroll, but this one's very situational. In the B tier, we have Scholar Rise, one of my favorite comps, but unfortunately not very good right now. I wouldn't say it's bad, it's just mediocre. Witchy Walla Poppy, another hero augment. Portal Ezreal, could be stronger. Gwen Fiora, could be stronger. And Sugarcraft, highly situational. I would only really play Sugarcraft if you get an early Sugarcraft spatula, which does not happen very often. High horsepower Lilia, garbage. Molten Caramel Rumble, garbage. Zillion reroll, probably a different day. Same for Ashe and Katarina. Let's move on into the comps. So first off, we have Multistriker Kassidin. Most powerful 2 cost reroll in my opinion. We could check the data on that if you really want. I go over to champions, I type in 2 costs over here. Then we look at like 3-star average placements, like Kassidin and Syndra are at the top there. But the thing is with Syndra is that you only play it if you have a Syndra at the start. And I feel like that kind of bumps it up a little bit more. But Multistriker Kassidin is extremely powerful. You just need a Quicksilver on Kassidin. I'd say that's a mandatory item. Then Bloodthirster, incredible for healing and the shield effect. Rageblade, he's going to be hitting people a lot, so you want the Rageblade there. But there are other couple of item options down here. A lot of people like using the Banshee's Veil and putting it on, let's say, your Shen, and then it hits Kassidin and someone else so that you get the Quicksilver effect built in, and then you have 3 damage items on Kassidin. So what should you do in that situation? Well, you could add in like a Rageblade, Archangels, Titan's Resolve, all good items. If you have like the Banshee's Veil, or if you have like Silver Veil or an augment that gives healing, that way you don't need the Bloodthirster. There are all sorts of ways to give Kassidin a bit more damage. After that, you want to complement him with 5 Multistrikers. That's going to be Jax, Kassidin, Hecarim, Akali, and Kalista in the back. Kassidin does magic damage, so you want the Ionic Spark on your Shen. Sunfire Cape isn't bad either because it's a good utility item, so Shen's kind of your utility tank. And then there's a Kalista in the back. So contrary to other rerolls where you go for multiple units, Kassidin only cares about himself. Yeah, you could itemize your Akali if you get Akali to 3-star, but it's really a Kassidin comp. He's the one that you want to kind of base your whole team around. But if you do manage to get an Akali 3, any sort of frontline melee items will do well on her, like Edge Knight, Bloodthirster, things like that. But that's really like the basic part of this comp. For augments, I have the Multistriker crest over here, very, very strong. Support Golem, really good. You really want support items. Press the Attack, that's another Multistriker augment, really, really good. Support Anvil, tiny but deadly, incredible. Anytime you have a melee carry, tiny but deadly is the best augment because it gives them a bunch of attack speed, which is what they want to deal more damage. I mean, for crying out loud, we're building a Rage Blade on Kassidin. Of course he wants attack speed. And also you get the movement speed increase, which is absolutely fantastic on him. That way he does not waste time running around. Lastly, for silver augments, stuff that helps you get Kassidin 3 is really good, such as Team Builder. Pandora's Bench is really popular right now, and also Featherweight's incredibly powerful for him too. But if you want the full in-depth write-up on how to play the Kassidin comp, head on over to the website bunnymuffins.lol/meta. We've been keeping up this website and updating it every Friday for over 4 years now. So bookmark it, share it with your friend who's also trying to get better at TFT. It's just like a great resource, and it's got all the details there too. Next up we have is Syndra Cassiopeia reroll. If you ever get an early Syndra, just play her, start stacking her, put a Shojin on her, put a Nashor's Tooth on her, and once you get Syndra 2-star, you will not lose in the mid game. And once you get Syndra 3-star, you won't lose in the late game either. So that's the great thing about Syndra. It's really, really stupid. You just want that early Syndra to get stacking right away. So Syndra scales really well off of ability power, and like as she casts more and more, her spell gets more and more powerful. So getting like a Jeweled Gauntlet, very, very good on her. Cassiopeia is a bit easier, but also harder in some ways. She wants the exact items, Rage Blade, Hextech Gunblade. There isn't really too much deviation there. Like you can put other stuff on her, but I don't think it's as good. And these two enchanters in the backline are just gonna go crazy. So every time Cassiopeia casts her spell, her next auto attacks deal magic damage. So you just want her like firing off as much as possible. And whenever you have a stacking build, such as like a Archangels or Rage Blade, having some sort of healing item is really good on them. That way in the late parts of the fight, once they're all stacked up, they heal everyone and kill everyone at the same time. It's a really good kind of duo effect. For your tanks, you have a couple of different options. So you're running a 2-cost reroll. You have Syndra as a 2-cost, Cassiopeia as a 2-cost, and then Shyvana's also a 2-cost. So if you are able to get Shyvana 3-star, for sure, itemize her. She's gonna be fantastic. But let's say you hit Syndra 3-star and Cassiopeia 3-star, but then you're not seeing many Shyvanas. What do? You could level up and play for 3-star Nico or 3-star Swain, and then have them as your main tank. Or if you don't have any of those, go for Nasus at 4 cost and just run a 2-star Nasus with a bunch of tank items. Really, really flexible with a 6 shapeshifter frontline and absolutely incredible comp. Also, if you haven't realized yet, for augments, there's an augment that turns all your items into Guinsoo Rage Blades with like an added effect. That's a prismatic augment, absolutely powerful on Cassiopeia. Still good on Syndra because it gets her to cast a lot too. I'd say that's like one of the best augments for the comp, or one of the more fun ones at least. Another great one is Learning to Spell. That's the one you get at the start of the game, and when you play them and they kill people, they gain bonus AP based on like how many takedowns they get. So that is another really, really good augment. Shapeshifter augments are good because you're running 6 Shapeshifter. Magic Wand's good, you love rod items. Any reroll augments good, such as like Prismatic Ticket, Team Building, Featherweights, Pandora's Bench, as we talked about before. Whenever you're re-rolling, you kind of want those augments, but absolutely incredible comp. Let's go into the next one here, Built Different. Built Different, you need the Built Different augment, very situational comp, but it's very, very powerful as we saw in the stats before. And I think it's just gonna be one of the easier comps to play. You just go level 8 and play all the 4-cost units. All the 4-cost units are absolutely incredible. And you could also run duplicate copies of your units. So for example, if you have a 2-star Kalista out there and you get another 2-star Kalista, you could just play 2 of them at the same time and still benefit from Built Different. It's really, really good because in the super late game, you could potentially even get a Kalista 3-star. And obviously we all know what happens when that gets there. You should at least get second, if not win the game. If not, something is incredibly wrong with the game you're in. Apart from that though, other good carries in this comp are going to be Fiora, Olaf with the Titans BT build, Taric as a main tank, or Tahm Kench. If you want to run duplicate tanks, Tahm Kench is a great person to run because even without items, people. Another good tank to itemize is Nasus, though I will say one thing, there's a version of Built Different where people play Varus, and when you play Varus, you cannot play Nasus, so keep that in mind. But if you get a 2-star Varus, play him, throw attack damage items on him. He uses the same items, but it's just one thing to note. There are a couple different variations of this build. And here you could run duplicates, you could run legendaries. It's just kind of here to get you started. But apart from the Built Different augments, what augment should we get? Probably Reinforcement's really good. You just want a lot of 4-cost units. New Recruit's decent. You just add another beefy gloves, incredible, because you're able to itemize a lot of your different units that are highly statted. But yeah, getting one sort of econ augment's decent as well, so that you can get to level 8 and have more gold to roll for 2-star 4-cost. That's also really good. But the next comp up we have is Sweet Tooth Nunu. This one requires the Sweet Tooth augment. It's really cute. If we click into here, we could hover over the augment and it'll say gain a Nunu. Your strongest Nunu gains 200% damage amp per 100 health. And his heal scales with health. Whenever his ability kills an enemy, Nunu permanently gains 35 health. So he's just like a stacking machine. You want the Warmogs on him. You get percent max health to even accentuate it even more. Bloodthirster's really good. You get like a percent health shield from Bloodthirster. So if you have like a 5,000 HP tank, 25% of that, what was that, 1250? Not bad, you know, that's just a free health bar. Archangel, of course, going to be great because he's going to be living throughout the whole fight, so that you get your Archangel stacking so he could kill stuff and get bigger, rinse, repeat. But this build, the rest of it is going to be 5 Honeymancy, so you have Nunu, Ziggs, Kogmaw, Veigar, and Blitzcrank. And then in the backline with your Veigar, just put blue buff plus some sort of AP or damage items on him. Throw the leftovers on him, it's okay. Taric, Sunfire Cape, and Ionic Spark going to be the go-tos. Just get utility on him, and that's pretty much the build. I have seen other versions of this where you go for like a lot of Bastion. That one also works, but it kind of depends on what you're hitting that game. As for other augments, like the Bastion and Honeybee augments are really good. What's it called? Like Giant and Huge or something like that. What was it called again? Giant and Mighty, that's another great one. Oh, a fun one is Find Your Center. That's the one where when you put a unit in the center of your board, they gain an even greater effect. And dropping Nunu in there when he's like the only unit you care about, absolutely incredible. But you want to follow a 2-cost reroll pattern for that, just because you are rolling for 2-cost units. And then after that, roll for Veigar. Next one up we have is Chrono Karma. Again, probably the best flex comp of the set, at least during this patch. You just play 4 Chrono and throw other stuff with it. Preservers are going to be the first choice. Because Zillion's a preserver, and preservers are like one of the most flexible front lines in the game right now. Morgana and Rakan are really, really good. And for the backline, Karma's items is mandatory blue buff. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. But then a lot of people are building Morello on Karma, but I think red buff is a bit better. The reason why is because Karma, you want her to cast as quickly as possible. And red buff helps with that more than the ability power that you get from Morello Namicon. It really outweighs it because Karma's like a stall comp. She just spreads her thing, and when everyone has a healing debuff faster, that's what you really want. You don't care too much about the ability power damage. Like, obviously, it's nice to have, but the effect you get from red buff is a lot more. So definitely go blue buff, red buff. But worst case, go blue buff Morello. After that, throw in a Gnasher's Tooth, get her to cast even faster. And then for your main tank, I like using Vex. Some people like using Rakan. I think they're both around the same. Vex gets like the Chrono boost, but Rakan's just a 4-cost unit, so he's a bit better and more consistent to 2-star. You're not going to get a 3-star Vex when you play this in a lot of cases. And also, don't forget a Static Shiv on your Zillion. One thing to note, Stoneplate is a great item on Vex. It's like pretty much made for Vex because if you read Vex, she gains an increased effect when units target her. So you want a lot of units to target her, therefore you want a Stoneplate. Unfortunately, I did some data checking. Stoneplate's not the best item on Vex right now because Stoneplate's not the best item on almost anybody because it's just a bit weak compared to the other tank items right now. But there are going to be other metas where you want the Stoneplate. But right now, I'd say like Crown Guard's her best item, followed by Steadfast Heart. Those two work really well together as well. But the other two Chronos are going to be Camille and Zillion. Zillion's good with the Static Shiv just so you reduce people's magic resistance. Really nice there. Incanter, drop in a Cassiopeia. She also gives you Witchcraft with Morgana, which is nice. But you just need any Incanter, doesn't really matter too much. Oh, and by the way, you want a strong early game for this comp because unless you hit Karma, you're going to be in for a world of hurt when you roll down during stage 4. And if you don't hit Karma, you're going to be screwed. So you need to be prepared for that. And the best way to prepare for that is to not be screwed in the early game. So next one up we have is Multistriker Kalista. I think this is the best version of Kalista, just because she makes such great use of the Multistriker effect. I love Rage Blade on her, and I also love Runons. Runons is absolutely incredible on Kalista, and of course you need the Queen's Crown on her because she is going to be your queen in this case. It just gives damage amp. Why wouldn't you want it? And in the front line we have all the other Multistrikers. We have Hecarim, Kassidin, Camille, Jax, Akali, and Ashe. And then you drop in Milio for Fairy, but it could be someone else. And then we have Shen for Bastion, and he also gets the execute effect from Pyro with the Akali, which is not mandatory, but it is a bit nice. Drop an Even Shroud on your Shen, and he is going to be like kind of your main tank. Like, he's not the tankiest unit in the world as a 3-cost unit, but it's what you got, you know? If you do the regular fairy version of Kalista, you could run something like a Rakan, which is really nice. But I like the multi-strikers a lot, especially if you get a +1 multi-striker. It makes things a lot easier to get. That way you don't have to rely on hitting Camille. And that way you could reach 7 multi-striker really, really easily. You could always mix and match multi-strikers with more fairies also when you want to buff up your Kalista. All that is fine and dandy. But just standard leveling for this comp. Next one up we have is going to be Witchcraft, Fiora, and Karma. So this comp is going to be a little bit interesting because it uses 2 different 4-costs, which are kind of from different realms, so to speak. But this comp is not racist. Witches welcome Karma with open arms, as long as you throw a Witchcraft emblem on her. And she is going to be fantastic in that sense. And she just applies the Witchcraft spell to everyone. Remember how I said before, when she spreads her red buff or Morello effect, it's really good because she targets different units every time she kind of casts, right? So imagine that with the Witchcraft buff. She's going to be putting her spell on everyone. So she's like the perfect user of Witchcraft emblem, which is really, really nice. Complement that with a Fiora, Sterex, Bloodthirster, Titans, classic combo in the front line, and then Nasus as your main tank as a shapeshifter, or you could use Rakan if you want to use a Preserver unit. Both of them are fine, but you only get Preserver once you get Morgana, and Morgana's a 5-cost. You don't always get her, but when you do, it is really, really nice. Witchcraft emblem probably bumps this comp up half a tier when you really think about it. Another important note about this comp is that you could go into this comp if you are trying to go for Akali and Nilah build, because Fiora uses the same items as Akali and Nilah. So let's say in stage 2, you have a good start for Akali and Nilah reroll, and you're like, okay, let me go for this. But then come stage 3, when you're about to start re-rolling for it or slow rolling for it, you're like, I don't have many Akalis or Nilahs. What should I do? Well, going into a Fiora comp makes a lot of sense because, again, she uses the same items. So that's one neat little thing you could do from there. Other than that, if you do get a Witchcraft emblem at the start of the game, this is a very viable comp to kind of just force. But it is a bit flexible too. You don't have to run everything you see here. Like some games you don't get Morgana, so you have to run a different Witchcraft unit instead. I think it's Poppy, so you have to run other stuff there. You could run like a powerful Bastion unit instead, so you could do like Poppy plus Taric if you don't get that. But obviously in the late game, you want the Morgana plus the Rakan because they're just better units than Poppy. For augments, getting an XP augment's really good because you're doing a fast 8. After that, like item augments, combat augments, really nice. Obviously, any of the emblem augments work too. Next up we have is the fast 9 build. So for this one, speaking of augments, you definitely want some sort of experience augments or gold augments because this comp is really expensive, but it revolves around Xerath. Xerath is the legendary that you just slap into any comp and he's going to be good. Every set has one of those, and this time it's going to be Xerath. So what he does is you drop a Shojin on him, and then you put a bunch of ability power items on him, and then he goes doo and kind of kills everything. So really, really nice there. For your frontline, Preserver frontline is the standard. Like when in doubt, run Preserver frontline because it works in literally like every comp almost. And then since Xerath's and Arcana, you run a bunch of Arcana units as well. We have 10 units listed out here. You don't need to run 10. You don't need to be level 10 to play this comp. You could be level 9 and just drop one of the units you see here because as with any fast 9 build, you need to be able to play around different legendaries that you hit. You could also play different legendaries than the ones you see here. So feel free to drag and drop any champs that you're hitting or not hitting based on what you see here. But essentially, if you have high HP or like a big economy, or if you're playing on like Crab Rave or Scuttle Puddle, this is a very welcome comp to kind of try. Next one up we have is going to be the A tier. So the S tiers are like the go-tos. You should be trying to go for them every game, but unfortunately, Multistriker Kassidin, hard to do because you need a good Kassidin start. Syndra, you want to be uncontested and you need an early Syndra and you need items for her. Built different, you need the augment. Sweet Tooth, you need the augment. Chrono Karma, I guess you could force this every game. Multistriker Kalista, if you know how to play Bastion AD as well, then you could kind of hard force this every single game. Just go like 4-cost attack damage build every game, but just different champions. Witchcraft, Fiora, Karma, you could force with the emblem. And Fast 9, only force if you have like a lot of gold. So most of the S tiers are situational apart from the Karma build. So the Karma might be the best one if you're just trying to one-trick something this set, though I don't really recommend that because, again, as I talked about before, it's a pretty flexible set, and augments, some of them are really, really good. But let's get into the Bastion plus attack damage flex with Kalista or Varus. So what you want to do is run 4 Bastion, or you could run 4 Preserver too. It's really like just a pure flex comp. You could do that with either Kalista or Varus carry, depending on who you hit. Lots of different versions of this comp. I'm not going to throw up like 6 different images because that's essentially kind of what it is. It's like a lot of different ways you could go. Essentially, whatever 4 cost you're hitting, play around that. So if you get Varus, maybe play him plus some more Pyros. If you're hitting Kalista, maybe play a few more Fairies. If you're hitting Preservers, play Preservers. If you're hitting Bastions, play Bastions. But at the end of the day, you want to put Even Shroud plus like Sunfire on one of your tanks and then have like a Rage Blade backline. And if you're Kalista, do like double Rage Blade. If it's Varus, do like Rage Blade, I don't know, like Last Whisper, Giant Slayer, if you don't have the Even Shroud, or like Infinity Edge, Even Shroud, Deathblade, things like that. There's a whole list of items down here that you can kind of try. But essentially, it's just a fast 8 comp, and then you roll down, see what you're hitting, and then lean more into whatever you're hitting. One thing to note is that, again, if you're going Varus, try out the Pyro build as well. And you could also do Preserver Flex or Multistriker Kassidin that we talked about before. Next comp up we have is the Akali Nilah build. One of my favorite comps from PvE. It's just like a degenerate 2-cost reroll build. You go for Akali 3 and Nilah 3. However, unlike other reroll comps where you just rely on one person, such as the Kassidin build, which is up here, like you really only care about Kassidin. Akali, while nice, is not necessary. But this Akali Nilah build, you definitely want both of them to be 3-star. The comp gets like a ton better. And you also need like a ton of swords to make this build work. So you need Edge of Night, Infinity Edge, Bloodthirster, Infinity Edge. I'd say the mandatory items in this build is Edge of Night for Akali and then Bloodthirster for Nilah. Nilah is really good because whenever she gets a shield, she gets a buff, and Bloodthirster gives you a free shield, so that's pretty nice. Get an Even Shroud on your Shen, but essentially it's just 2-cost reroll. Get Akali 3, Nilah 3, and then you shift into a 3-cost reroll. You could go for Shen 3 or like Mordekaiser Hecarim 3, or just level up and play a bunch more multi-strikers. Both those options work. It just depends on what you're feeling that day. So sometimes people play like 5 multi-striker, they add in Camille plus someone else, and they just power level instead. Because what level is this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This is a level 7 comp that you see here. So you could go level 9, play 5 multi-striker instead of going for like 3-star Shen, for example. So now you're probably wondering, like, when do I want to power level? When do I want to go for 3 stars? If you have enough items for everyone, go for the 3 stars. Also, if you have copies of the units, like if you have like 5 Shens, like yeah, go for Shen 3, you know? But oftentimes a mistake I see people making is that they go for a 3-star version of a comp, but then like they don't have items to put on them. And that's kind of a waste of a 3-star. So only go for 3 stars if you have items. So if you don't have a lot of items this game, just power level up and go for 5 multi-striker instead. But really easy comp. You just need to make sure you hit Nilah and Akali. So one thing to note is you want to get a bunch of reroll augments. It's even more important than like other comps when you're rerolling. Like if you have Prismatic Ticket for Kassidin reroll, it's like good, but it's not great. For this comp, it's great because you need to afford both Akali 3 and Nilah 3, and that's pretty hard sometimes. But next build up we have is going to be the Kogmaw Jinx Hunter reroll. Very, very fun stuff. This one's just like another reroll build. This time it's based around hunters instead of Honeymancy, but Kogmaw probably works in a Honeymancy build as well. But with Jinx, it's nice because you get Nunu as your main tank. So every comp needs a tank and a damage dealer, and this one has both. So you want to go for Kogmaw and Nunu at the same time. That's really going to stabilize you in the early parts of the game. Then later on, get the Jinx 3. She's kind of like your late game insurance. And if you need even more, you could drop items on Olaf. Olaf 2-star with 4 Hunter, going to be popping also. And on your way there, you could also pick up a Rumble 3-star if you need an extra tank. But sometimes you don't have gold to do everything that you want to do in life. Like, that's just how life works, you know? I want 10 houses, but I don't even have one. So unfortunately, you have to sometimes make do with only Nunu and Kogmaw. But if you're really rich, you could get Rumble 3-star, you could get Jinx 3-star. And then you can power level up, throw in 4 hunters, and be really good after that. One thing to note, I know Twitch has a armor reduction effect, but oftentimes when Twitch is just a random 2-star unit, he dies, and therefore you still want Last Whisper on your important people in the back. So I drop it on my Jinx. She's going to be reducing armor for the Kogmaw, and that's going to be all really good. By the way, Kogmaw wants to be positioned next to other units because he spits out his goo, and for some reason that makes people attack faster. So Jinx attacks faster when she is next to Kogmaw because she throws this goo in a line. It's going to hit some of the frontliners, but it's also going to hit Jinx, so that's really nice. Next one up we have is Deja Vu Galio. If anyone remembers Deja from an earlier set, it was like the Dragon set. Was that set 7, 8? I don't remember all the numbers, but interesting set where dragons cost a lot of money, and Deja was one of them, and Galio turns into Deja. So Galio wants Rageblade, Rageblade, Hextech, Gunblade. No ifs, ands, or buts about that because he's an attack speed champion when he gets the Deja Vu augment, and because of that, you just need Rageblades on him. After that, drop in 4 Vanguard, 3 Mage, and then throw in whatever you want after that. Some people like Arcanas, some people like adding in more Mages. I checked the data. Some people say that like, oh, Mage is bad for Galio because that means he is spending time casting his spell and therefore not attacking as much. But I checked the data. With Deja Vu, Mage is good, but some people run it without Mage. Both versions work. It's around the same, honestly, but that's just something to kind of keep in mind. Vex, kind of same items from before. Stoneplate, Crown Guard, and Steadfast Heart. Pretty solid combo on her, but really any tank items do. You want to focus on getting Rageblade, Rageblade, Hextech, Gunblade, and then whatever tank items you get for Vex, that's what she's getting that game. You know, she can't be that picky. With that in mind, Pandora's items really, really good, and also anger issues. So if your Vex gets really angry, just put 3 Rageblades on her too. Next one up we have is going to be Zap Attack Blitzcrank, another hero augment down here. You're going to be following a 1-cost reroll, and all the 1-cost hero augments, they give you 3 copies of the unit, so you get 3 Blitzcranks at the start of the game if you get that augment. Makes it a lot easier, and because of that, you don't need Ziggs 3. A lot of rerolls of old, you had to get like 1-cost 3-star in the front line, 1-cost 3-star in the back line, but nowadays you don't with the hero augments. And that's because they give you 3 copies of the unit. So if you get Ziggs 3, great, fantastic, but it's not going to win you the game or anything. Which actually is good news because in the cases where you miss out on him, you're not losing the game either. Instead, what you want to do is item up Veigar as your secondary carry. It's pretty much the same build as Sweet Tooth Nunu if you haven't figured that out yet. Let's look at this. So remember that image in your head, and let's go to Nunu. That one is all the way up here. It's the same exact thing. You just itemize your Blitzcrank instead of your Nunu. So that's really all that is, but it's also a very good comp. Sometimes you get one augment, sometimes you get the other one. Next build up we have is Reroll Veigar. So finally a Veigar reroll build where it's actually built around Veigar, and this one is around 5 mages. So Vex is the main tank for mages, and any mage comp's going to use her. And then in the backline you have Veigar, blue buff, Jeweled Gauntlet, and Hextech Gunblade, standard combo for him. You need the blue buff for casting quickly. Jeweled Gauntlet is better than Rabadon's Death Cap because Veigar gets built-in ability power when you buy charms. And then Hextech Gunblade, really good backline item in general. And then Nami, red buff or Morello in the back to get her to cast faster and apply the healing debuff to everyone. And Static Shiv for magic penetration. You want your Yuumi on your Vex there. And yeah, that's pretty much all there is to it. Get a reroll augment because 3-cost reroll is more expensive than 1 and 2-cost. So Prismatic Ticket really good. Pandora's Bench really good. Team Builder, fantastic. That's probably the best one. Team Builder's just like goated reroll augment, honestly. Magic Wand, incredibly good. Any mage cap's good too. And that's pretty much going to be your team. You could get to 7 mages if you do get a mage cap, so that is a super big power spike. Next comp up we have is Eldritch Mages. This one is going to be revolved around Nami. Nami needs mage also. So you want to go deep into Eldritch, and if you get like an Eldritch Spatula, that's going to be really powerful for your team, but you still need to run mage in this comp because Nami casts twice. Essentially, if you're not running mage when you're playing Nami, she's like pretty useless because every 3 casts, she casts her big like tsunami thing. And because of that, you need her to cast as much as possible, and mage gives you double cast, so it's like a no-brainer to run mage whenever you're running Nami. With that in mind, you want Spear Shojin, great on her. Archangel Staff, decent for stacking, and Nashor's Tooth, great for getting her to cast multiple times. Nora and Yuumi likes the Shojin plus any other items you could throw on him. And then we have Briar, Bloodthirster, Titans, and the Sterix. Pretty decent build for a melee carry, it's pretty standard as well, and you don't really have great tanks. Mordekaiser, I'm not gonna lie, he's probably one of the worst tanks for how much he costs I've ever seen. I'm pretty sure Blitzcrank is tankier than Mordekaiser, and that's a 1-cost unit. So because of that, I focus more on damage items when playing Eldritch, just because your tanks, like, you're not going to go for a 3-star Elise, you're not going to go for a 3-star Galio, because you need Briar for 7 Eldritch, and Briar's just like a decent unit later on when you're playing this comp, and like Mordekaiser is the one that you would normally do because he's the highest cost unit, but unfortunately he doesn't really do much, and then Eldritch does not have a 4-cost tank, so unfortunately, you just have to focus on damage items when you play this build, but standard leveling pattern for this, focus on getting like the 4 cost. I would probably only play this with a +1 emblem because it makes it much easier to hit 7, because a lot of the games you just don't get Briar. Next one up we have is Pyro Varus, another great comp to play out of the AD Flex build. This time we have 4 Pyro, 4 Blaster, and a couple of random tanks in the front. So Nasus is going to be the main tank with the shapeshifters, and then Smolder and the other blasters are in the back. So Smolder's really good. Ezreal and Hui, I'm going to be honest, they don't really do anything in this comp. They're just there to give more blaster buff. But Smolder does do really good stuff. Unfortunately, Smolder is not the smartest person in the world, so he flies near the enemies. So getting a Bloodthirster or Hextech Gunblade on Smolder, not a bad idea, but your main carry is going to be Varus. And if you ever get Pyro Spatula, just drop it on Smolder or whoever else you're kind of itemizing as a legendary. Next one up we have is Nasus. Generic tank items on him, Warmogs, Bramble Vest, Dragon Claw, like any tank item will do, like Steadfast Hearts. I'm probably not naming like 10 of them right now. But this build is pretty solid. 4 Pyro is really good for getting like all the Cinder stacks, and then Varus ends up attacking really quickly later on. I updated the description stuff down here a little bit because I copy and pasted from somewhere else, but I need to refresh again because I forgot to update the other stuff too. But overall, like, the images are good. Like, I'm going to try to update as many of the descriptions as I can. It was a lot of comps this set. So over the next couple days, again, you have to be checking bunnymuffins.lol/meta constantly. I will be updating it as the days go on. But what I really like about this comp is getting a bunch of Pyro spats to get to 5 Pyro. That's really nice. Getting a lot of items is really good because you have so many people to itemize. Varus, Smolder, and Nasus are going to be your core people to itemize. So getting item grab bag, buried treasures, you have my sword, going to be really good for this comp. Who to itemize if you have like so many items, or if you're on like Crab Rave, everything drops. Shen is another good one, Diana's another good one, and then even like Ezreal and Hui. Like, even though I said they were useless, if they have items, they are not useless anymore. So that's another thing to kind of keep in mind. So this comp is really good when you have a lot of items you could kind of use. Next comp up, we have is Spider Queen Elise. This is going to be a hero augment comp. You just run 6 shapeshifters and throw a BT Archangels on Elise. Third item doesn't matter that much. I've seen Warmogs do the best, but really anything can fit in that third spot. I kind of have seen everything. In the backline, you want to be running Smolder as like your late game insurance. So you re-roll for Elise 3-star and then power level up, throw as many shapeshifters as you can into the game. And then if you happen to hit Varus Smolder, drop them in. If not, another good option you could use is Xerath in the backline. Just throw any random items on him to help kind of be your secondary carry. As like one of your tanks, Nasus is going to be the go-to, of course. He's just like a very tanky shapeshifter. He's the 4-cost. He's like the main guy. And then if you don't have Jace, you could play something like Briar. Briar's the legendary shapeshifter, but again, like, hard to go for specific legendaries. But if you get it, definitely play it. Take Jace out, he's kind of useless. You don't really need 3-star Jace, you just kind of go for him sometimes because you're going for 1-cost units. But any of the shapeshifter augments are obviously really good. Big and Mighty, I forgot what this one's called already. That one's really good. Any reroll augments are decent, so there's that. Blossoming Lotus, also really good on Elise. Sometimes people run like a Jeweled Gauntlet on her, but if you have Blossoming Lotus, you don't need that. Radiant items are good when you only care about 1 unit, which is kind of what this comp is about. So Radiant or Ornn items are pretty good, but I have the item info down here. Next one up we have is Spin to Win Wukong. This one's going to be a 3-cost reroll, but unlike the other hero augments, this one gives 2 copies of Wukong instead of just 1, but you can only get it on stage 3-2. So that's one important thing. So you cannot just force this comp at the start of the game because you get it so late. If you got it on stage 2-1, then yeah, sure, go for it. But on stage 3-2, unless you get this augment, like, you cannot play this comp, you know? Granted, Wukong does work in a lot of different builds, but if you want to play specifically spin to win Wukong, like, you have to kind of flex into it. So Wukong 3 is pretty interesting because Bloodthirster and Sterix are the 2 best items on him, but then the 3rd item, I checked the data and Gargoyle Stoneplate does really well on him, but of course you could use like Titan's Resolve or like Redemption. Like, it's weird. The tank items work really well on spin to win Wukong as the 3rd item after Bloodthirster and Sterix. But honestly, you could put anything there. Ideally, again, you want like Radiant or Ornn items on him because you're kind of building your entire comp around him. You're playing 4 Arcana, 4 Preserver, all to buff him up. Those are really the only 2 kind of traits right now that buff up units that are not your own. Another one that does it is Incanter, but it doesn't really give that much, only 10 AP. But if you need a secondary carry, use Bard. Bard's pretty solid. And of course, in the late game, use Xerath. Xerath just works with any build. Next one up, we have is 2 Tanky Blasters. So this one is really easy to play because all you need to do is head on over to your team planner, click the units Swain, Neeko, Ezreal, and Hui, and you're good to go. You don't need to do anything after that. Swain's going to be your main tank, and then Neeko's going to be your utility tank, and then you just go Shojin on Ezreal and Hui, and then put the attack damage items on Ezreal, put the ability power items on Hui, and you're like set, you know? So any item effect where it's like gain a random item, really good for this comp because anyone can use something. Ezreal uses the AD, Hui AP, and then your front line uses all the tank items, but essentially the build's just this. You're just going to do 3-cost reroll pattern and get them to 3-star, and there isn't too much to do after that. Easiest comp to play, pretty solid too. We could check the data on it. I'm gonna go over to augments, type in 2 tanky, and we'll see that it is at a 4.37, you know, not bad. That's why it's on the lower part of the A tier. The next one up we have is gonna be Frostfire Olaf. Very interesting build. This one's gonna be like Varus and Olaf being the 2 like go-to guys, and you wanna go as many frosts as possible, like preferably like 5+, if not 7 sometimes. If you ever get like +1 frost or pyro, like the power of this comp goes like insane. If you go frost, put it on Varus. If you get pyro, put it on Olaf. And then for your main tank, you're gonna use Nasus. Nasus is pretty solid. He's just like a solid 4-cost tank. Put another shapeshifter there with Swain, also a frost unit. They just share a lot of like good synergies together, like Shen, Nasus, Swain, Diana. They all complement each other, and one's frost, one is a pyro, so perfect sense there. Throw some random people in the backline. Twitch, Olaf have to be played together because they're both hunters. Hui, Blaster, so Blaster plus Varus, like they just complement each other so well. Like, look at the left-hand side. It's like a perfect synergy comp. If you like playing those, doesn't really matter that much. But any of the trait-related augments going to be perfect for this. Tiny but deadly, pretty good for Olaf. And I actually forgot what this other one is. Like combat bandages and Silver Veil. Yeah, those are good too. By the way, Silver Veil, I know Olaf has built-in like CC immunity, but Silver Veil is still really good to get him to cast first because he doesn't get his CC immunity until he casts. It's like active for the next 5 seconds, gain like a bunch of stats and immunity to crowd control, but he doesn't get it at the start of the fight, and sometimes he gets stunned before that kind of happens. So you could check the data all you want. Like Silver Veil is incredibly good on Olaf for some reason, even though I thought it to be redundant at first. As for items, tank items on Nasus, on Olaf you want the frontline bruiser items. On Varus, just like standard Varus build, Shojin plus AD damage. And that's pretty much it. Next one up we have is going to be Corrupt Vampiric Scepter Warwick. Very, very interesting build. Only run Warwick reroll with Corrupted Vampiric Scepter. This one makes it so he gains like a huge buff, but he can't cast his ability anymore. Luckily for you, Warwick's ability is pretty useless, so this is like this item was made for him. So drop a Quicksilver on him, run 7 Frost, and then Titan's good item. Like some people do Rageblade. I think I mentioned that down here, like Titan's Resolve or Rageblade, but pretty much just Corrupted Vamp Scepter, Quicksilver, and then anything else for third item. He will run through people. Also, you know how sometimes people put melee carries like on the second row or like kind of sandwiched between people? You want your Warwick front and center, or like front and to the left or to the right, either or. You want him to be targeted because he gains a benefit when he's low. Also, like he heals up a bunch, so you're not too scared about putting him in the front line. As for secondary carries, you definitely want Twitch. Red buff, IE, Rageblade, great items on him. Twitch can honestly use any backline AD carry items though, doesn't have to be those exact ones. Funnily enough, like Warwick's not a hunter, so he doesn't actually get hunter buff. He's a vanguard, but you get 7 frost from this, pretty solid. If you get a +1 frost, you could run Arcana and use that to kind of help Warwick a little bit. But only go for this comp if you meet 2 conditions. You have Vampiric Scepter, and you also have a lot of Warwicks. I would not go for it otherwise. And like Warwick reroll probably drops a whole tier without Vampiric Scepter, so definitely don't try it without it. But but this is definitely a fun comp to kind of try in those special situations. In the B tier, Rise is okay. Not the best. Just make sure you do Rageblade Rise, not Shojin Rise. A lot of people are still building Shojin Rise for some reason, even though I said not to, but they must have not subscribed to Bunny Muffin's YouTube channel. So that's one thing to keep in mind there. Okay build, probably not the patch for it, probably going to be buffed up later. Witchy Wallop Poppy. Let's data check a bunch of these hero augments, right? Stats, augments. Turn this off, and then was it Witchy Wallop? This one is going to be a 4 point, yeah. It's seen better days. Like whenever you look at these hero augments, data checking is going to be the best thing to do ever, because people are going to want to play all the hero augments, but that means you get better data for it, and like it's always going to be skewed a bit downwards. Just keep that in mind. So when you see something like Sweet Tooth being 3.95, it probably should be even better than that, because people are probably overtaking it. So you could data check all the other hero augments. What's it? High Horsepower Lilia, that's a garbage one. 5.46, yeah, that's in the C tier. Spoiler alert. What's another one? The Nunu one is, what's another one? The Blitzcrank one, Zap Attack, like 4.3, pretty solid there. But yeah, like better things to go for. Portal Ezreal, seen better days again. C tier, the Lilia comp we were talking about. And we have a bunch of other ones that I haven't made yet. I'm gonna make the B tiers later on, B and C tiers, because they're going to be bumped up to the A tier, and that's when I'll like really update them. But I'll try to add them in throughout the week in case you are interested in that. But we went through a whole lot of comps today. Holy cow. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Okay. It's probably like 15 plus comps. I can't even count. I saw someone else's tier list and they had like 60 comps or something like that. I didn't actually like look at the 60 comps because I was like, that is way too much. There probably are not 60 comps. Maybe in like very specific scenarios, but if you just want to focus on like a core base of comps, just focus on the S tiers right here. These are going to be the bread and butters for most people. A tier if you get a little frisky, and B tier if you are wanting to make the game a bit harder, and then C tier if you hate yourself, do that one. But overall, what comps am I going to play in this patch? Probably the Chrono Karma. Going to be spamming that one out a lot. And then if I hit the magic openers for any of the other ones up here in the S tier, I'm going to go for that. But don't default to Chrono Karma. I called it, so you're not allowed to go it. Go for like the AD flex instead, you know? But let me know down in the comments which comp is your favorite. Are there any ones that I'm missing that you really, really like? Let me know down as well. And if you are new, do join the Discord. Most people are active like during the starts of sets, so it's nice if you want to like meet other people who play TFT or like kind of discuss some random other stuff. But that's going to be it for me today. I'll be updating this every single Friday. I did a special Thursday edition because of the new set, but hopefully a lot of new guides will be coming out in the next couple of days as well. So I hope to see you all there.